Solomon's temple. We're told about King Solomon's temple. Incidentally, there was no King Solomon. So don't look for King Solomon in history, because there was no King Solomon.
I didn't take Maxwell's advice on this one, and I did look. And I found this San Francisco Chronicle article from 2003 where this Harvard professor is quoted as saying, "We don't need to rely any more on the Bible or Shoshank's inscriptions at Karnak to establish that Solomon and his kingdom really existed, because we now have the superb evidence of the radiocarbon dates."
That's the word Sol, Om, On. S-O-L is the sun in Latin. In Latin, the word sun is S-O-L, Sol. And in the Hindu priest of the sun, they call the sun Om.
Actually, the Hindus do not call the sun Om, and the symbol and word Om have no connotation to the sun directly that I can find whatsoever.
Remember the priest of Om? They chant Om. And On is the city of the sun. The Greeks call it Heliopolis. It's called Heliopolis to this day. But the Egyptians, Heliopolis. Heliopolis means the city of the sun. The city of the sun, Heliopolis in Greek, was originally called in the Egyptian On.
Keep in mind, he wants us to go to the Egyptian on that last one. I think on the first one he wants us to go to Latin. The second one is Hindu, but it doesn't really matter because he's lying there anyway. But the important part here is that the Hebrew people never even used the word Solomon. They used the word Shlomo, and the word Solomon comes from the Latin or Greek. So this could only work at a much later date, and I'm okay with that being something the mystery schools do, because they do seem to want to merge Judaism with sun worship. But Maxwell never seems to suggest that. He's always suggesting that it is the true history and that Solomon never existed, which is odd because it falls in line with what the mystery schools want us to believe and what they believe.
Look it up in any dictionary, O-N. That's why when you walk into a room, you flip a switch on.
Okay, let's just see if you can wrap your head around this stupidity here. What he is suggesting is that the Egyptian word for on, which has connotations to the sun, is why the English came up with the word on. Before the electric light was even invented, people were getting on their horses or whatever. So to say that the word on was invented anticipating our electric light, or to say that when they were trying to decide what to call the thing you would do to flip a switch of the new electric light, the Masons stepped in and said, "We shall call it on." It's just ridiculously stupid.
Because On was the city of the sun in Egypt. So the three words for the sun in the three esoteric languages of the world is Sol, Om, and On, Solomon. Look at the ground plan for Solomon's temple. Here's what it really is. You'll see the male phallic, and it's within the female. So the whole temple of Solomon, the holy is the male phallic, and the most holy is the head of the penis, and it goes into the female, which is called the temple of Solomon, the temple of life. And consequently, Solomon's temple was merely a representation of the sex act.
This is a little complicated, but Maxwell is telling you what Blavatsky believes, and he's also telling you what Albert Pike believes, and just about every Mason believes about the temple. They regard it as very, very symbolic and very important. The main problem is that the Hebrew people wrote more extensively about it and much more ancient and detailed writings about the temple, and their descriptions and reasoning for symbolism is vastly different than the modern writings of Blavatsky and Albert Pike. But this doesn't stop Maxwell from telling you which one is real and which one isn't. It's actually a symbol of Hiram Abiff, who the Masons believe to be a master Mason, and they actually don't really believe he was real either. They see him as a symbol of Osiris and the Osiris cycle of death and resurrecting. It is this tradition that is played out in Skull and Bones of the laying in the coffin and being reborn. That's why George Bush can say that he is born again when people ask him if he's a Christian. It all goes back to the ancient mystery schools of Egypt, and the initiates, all initiates, would lay into the sarcophagus of the great Pyramid of Giza to be reborn into the mystery school tradition. Oddly, Maxwell has done that.
If you've never been in the Great Pyramid of Giza, I will tell you it's an extraordinary experience. I laid in the king's sarcophagus and was blessed in a ritual by a Kemite priest. Here we're told about the manna from heaven. I don't know if you've ever remember Moses was leading the children of Israel to pick manna from heaven. They would find manna from heaven on the ground each morning, the scripture says. Here they are picking up the manna from heaven on the ground each morning. Here in Exodus 16:14, it says, "And when the dew that lay on the ground was gone up, behold, the face of the wilderness, there lay a small round thing." So they call it manna. Well, what is manna? The manna from heaven was a small round thing. And it says when the dew that was on the ground, of course, when the sun comes up, it evaporates. And behold, upon the face of the wilderness, there lay a small round thing. Manna, meaning Hebrew, what is it? And it's 7 characteristics from the old ancient world. Small, round, wafer-like, sweet, could be hard, can be melted, and it was obviously from heaven. Because when you ate the manna, you could talk to God.
Did you catch that? He moves on from that last characteristic, which was from heaven, and just simply says, because you could talk to God. Because it helps with his shrooms or manna theory, but the text in no way indicates or implies or suggests that manna had any purpose for talking to God or any other spiritual connotation whatsoever. It was strictly used for sustenance. Here, watch it again and watch how he makes the connections to mushrooms. Also take note of the other characteristics he mentions for manna.
Manna, meaning Hebrew, what is it? And it's 7 characteristics from the old ancient world. Small, round, wafer-like, sweet, could be hard, can be melted, and it was obviously from heaven. Because when you ate the manna, you could talk to God. Well, now we found out manna was a small round thing, mushrooms.
There are many problems in the text itself with trying to make manna psychedelic mushrooms. For instance, neither the psilocybin mushroom nor the Amanita muscaria mushroom will grow in the desert. The text also says that the manna would melt in the desert heat. This is not a characteristic of either one of those types of mushrooms, especially in the desert. In addition, it said that if it was left out, it would begin to stink and then get worms in it. Again, this is not the characteristic of either one of those mushrooms when they would simply dry up. It also makes it quite clear that they used manna every day for food. This would not be possible with either one of those mushrooms in nutritional value. In addition, in Exodus chapter 16:31, it says the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Anybody that's ever eaten psychedelic mushrooms will tell you they taste like a lot of things, but like wafers made with honey is not one of them.
And here are the priest of Israel. Here's the Hebrew priest of Israel wearing a mushroom on his head. The mushroom headdress. I've often wondered, see, because the mushrooms were a hallucinogenic drug. And I've often wondered, is that why they call the priest high priest?
I'm only addressing this one because I've actually received emails from people telling me that this is where the Hebrew term, the high priest, came from. Even Maxwell seems to know that this is an impossibility and is only using it as a bad joke. Because the term high priest, you must first realize, is an English slang term, the word high. In Hebrew, the word for high priest was gadol, which means great or large in number, intensity, loud, older, importance, that kind of thing. As far as their hats, kind of, sort of, maybe looking like mushrooms, I'm just not even going to address that.
Here in the catacombs of Rome, under the Vatican, you will find paintings in the old catacombs of the Amanita muscaria being the sacred tree.
Maxwell is wrong on quite a lot here. It's nowhere near the Vatican, it's nowhere near Rome, and it's not in a catacomb. It's actually in an abbey in Plaincourant, France. And